Hi, my name is Chris Killen, and thank you so much for having me to read at your event. This is a non-fiction piece which I wrote about Richard Brautigan and also kind of about Canada. And I'm recording this from my flat in Manchester in England. So let me just get to the right Word document. If you want to read any more of my work or see anything else I've been doing, I've got a website which you can visit, which is just called IamHavingANiceTime.com. I don't think this piece has a title. On the flight to Canada, I read An Unfortunate Woman, the posthumously published novel/autobiographical notebook thing by deceased American writer Richard Brautigan, on the fourth page of which I discovered that my birthday, 30th of January, was the same birthday as his. Someone should have bought me this book as a birthday present, I thought, there on the aeroplane. But no one had bought me the book as a birthday present, and it was not the 30th of January. It was something much more like the 30th of August, in either 2004 or 2005, and I was either 23 or 24 years old, moving in the direction of Vancouver, Canada, and Richard Brautigan had been dead for either 20 or 21 years. As he described in An Unfortunate Woman, the various things that happened to him during a few months in the 47th year of his life. A few months later, I was living in one quartered-off area of a large pink house in a suburb of Vancouver with two other 23 or 24-year-old men, one of whom, Andrew, was Canadian, and the other, Richard, was British like me. Andrew and Richard and I all had different favourite writers. Andrew's favourite writer was Haruki Murakami. Richard's favourite writer was Saul Bellow. My favourite writer was Richard Brautigan. When we weren't working on our newly acquired retail jobs, Andrew and Richard and I spent our time reading and writing and looking in second-hand bookshops, of which there seemed to be an almost infinite amount. Each new street you went down seemed to have a second-hand bookshop somewhere along it. It was in one of these shops that I first discovered you could buy almost all of Richard Brautigan's novels in original American hardback first editions for something like £10 or £11 each. I couldn't believe it. I would take one off the shelf and look inside the front cover at the penciled-in price of, say, 15 or 16 Canadian dollars. And then I would look around myself in disbelief, as if I was being involved in some sort of not very funny prank. And then I would carry the book to the counter. It was also in one of these bookshops, during the purchase of either Sombrero Fallout or Dreaming of Babylon, or So the Wind Won't Blow It All Away, or the Tokyo Montana Express, that I definitively changed my pronunciation from Brautigan to Brautigan, after hearing the owner of one of the bookshops saying it that way, and thinking, he probably knows more about it than I do. According to Google, Vancouver is only 138 miles away from Seattle. Sometimes I would imagine these Richard Brautigan hardbacks coming across the Canadian-American border, in hand luggage possibly, and then falling out. Or perhaps just not being what the person who bought it wanted it to be. Or being given as a gift to a Canadian person maybe, or something else that, anyway, caused them to end up here, in Vancouver, sitting on a shelf for $15 or $16, with no one seeming to give that much of a shit about them. There in Canada, I wished for some kind of Richard Brautigan club, which would be a place where you could go and talk to other people all evening about Richard Brautigan, because Andrew and Richard didn't really want to talk about him that much, and even the owners of the bookshops didn't really want to talk about him that much. Where was this book club, I wondered? For Christmas we bought a real tree and put it in the corner of the living room of one quarter of the pink house we were renting. We did not have many friends in Canada. Andrew, the Canadian person, was originally from Toronto, which was on the other side of the country. In his spare time he was learning Japanese at a local language school, and had made friends with some Japanese people, a few of whom he invited to our house on Christmas Day. One of these people Andrew invited was a girl called Sayaka, who covered her teeth when she smiled, and who made a small tingling feeling appear in my stomach when I looked at her. After a great deal of port wine, Sayaka and I ended up standing together on the first floor balcony at the back of the house, where you could see the glittering lights of Richmond and sometimes aeroplanes taking off and landing, and where, after finishing my cigarette and stubbing it out and not looking her in the eyes, I attempted to kiss her, and, to my surprise, she reciprocated, and then we were kissing, and then we had kissed, and then we went back into the living room holding hands, the sight of which elicited an audible gasp from the other Japanese people that Andrew had invited over. For a few weeks, Sayaka and I were what you might call dating, which involved sitting in bars and drinking glasses of very cold Canadian lager, and sitting in a Japanese restaurant and using chopsticks to varying degrees of proficiency, and renting videos from the Blockbuster near her apartment 2 nights in a row, while her flatmate was snowboarding in Whistler. The first night we rented a Japanese film called Afterlife, which was my choice and which we both enjoyed. The second night we rented an American-Australian co-production called Babe 2 Pig in the City, which was Sayaka's choice and which she enjoyed a bit more than I did. On January 30th in either 2005 or 2006, it was my 24th or 25th birthday, and things were not really working between Sayaka and I. There was too much of a language barrier and our personalities were too different, but only I seemed to feel this way. And as a consequence, I felt terrible and didn't know how to finish things without hurting her. I was sure there must be some kind of painless way to end things for all concerned, if only I could discover it. But in the meantime, I sat on a sofa and opened her birthday present, which was a weirdly delicate green scarf that seemed to symbolise just how little we knew about each other. "It's great," I said, putting it on for the first and only time in my life. The scarf was not the only weird thing in the room. There was also a smell, a kind of earthy rotting, which no one could seem to identify the source of. You need to make sure this relationship doesn't go any further, I told myself. Also, you need to find out where that smell is coming from. To make sure the relationship didn't go any further, I became vague and confusing. I turned up to things less and less, and I didn't smile or join in quite so much. Sayaka got the message, sort of, and I felt dreadful, and she probably felt dreadful too, and nobody put on any weirdly delicate green scarves, even though it was very cold that winter. By March, the relationship was over and the source of the smell had been discovered. Have you ever smelled a forgotten Christmas tree, left in the corner of a living room for 3 months in a house in Canada? If not, then let me tell you, it smells worse than shit. That spring, Richard and Andrew and I handed in our notices at our respective retail jobs and prepared to fly to Toronto. In the departures lounge, accompanied by the same group of friends who had initially gasped at our hand-holding, was Sayaka. It seemed impossible that she knew we were flying, but there she was. I went and stood with her for a little while, and we said not very much, and it was possibly one of the most awkward moments of my life. Then it was time to fly. On the plane to Toronto, I read the Tokyo-Montana Express, and now 6 or 7 years later, I am here reading this to you via a pre-recorded video from a room in Manchester in England. Hi.